Becoming Awesome with Peter D. Expand your consciousness. Welcome to Becoming Awesome. I'm Peter D. Today, I'm proud to say I have Dani Katz with me. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe the fortune to have this interview. So, say hi, Dani.
Hi, Peter.
I just want you to get your voice there so people can make a connection before I introduce you. So, Dani established her reputation as one of LA's edgiest literary talents, okay? LA Weekly, Los Angeles Times, Vice, Teen Vogue, and then moved to Santa Fe where she wrote for the Santa Fe Reporter. She's ghost-written several blockbuster books. And what's really interesting today is that Dani is a prolific cultural critic. She was one of the writers of the recently most banned documentary, Plandemic 2 Indoctrination. She also co-hosts a podcast with her alt-media legend, Emily Moyer of Off Planet Radio, and she has another podcast that she co-hosts, The Conscious Awesome Show. Just to let you know, we're going to have lots of links to all this later, but now I just want to introduce Dani Katz.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm just honored to be in your presence. I saw Plandemic, of course, amazing. I saw Plandemic 2, and I said, can I get an interview with you? Let's put a podcast out there and see how long before it gets banned.
Right.
So
the clock is ticking.
So tell me, what was your involvement with the documentary?
I was one of the writers of the documentary. My first assignment was Gates. I spent 3 weeks saying that I was getting a PhD in Bill Gates. And then I wrote the part on Fauci, the WHO, the fact checkers, Dr. Birx, and they would kind of keep me. Mickey and I have been friends for 20 years, so it would be like, an 11 p.m. phone call on Sunday, like, help with the ending, so I would just kind of jump in to help with some of the word wizardry.
Sweet. So tell me then, you would research and then put pieces together in the documentary?
Yes. So my background as a journalist is I've been tracking this, what I call the globalist agenda for about 20 years. And I would do really, really deep research. And then, like with Gates, I put together a 40-page dossier of here's every disgusting thing Gates is doing. And then from there, with, Mickey would tell me what we want, what we don't want, and I would write the script. So it was like deep research, putting together chunks, and then tailoring it down for a script. And then the fact-checking for Plandemic 2 was really intense. So it was a lot of emails back and forth with fact-checkers. Can you prove this? Do you have another source? So there were a lot of different steps.
So let's just talk about fact-checking for a second, because a large part of the Plandemic 2 video has a section on fact-checkers.
Yeah.
And here it is, you're fact-checking your facts about fact-checkers.
Yes.
Tell me what you learned about the fact-checkers that are the ones that are hired by the main companies that are keeping us banning videos like this one's going to be.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting realm. So the main one is the Poynter Institute. So the Poynter Institute, who owns PolitiFact and a couple others, that is the body that certifies all of the fact checkers. So when you have Facebook or Instagram citing independent fact checkers have said this is false, all of those independent fact checkers have gone through the Poynter Institute. The Poynter Institute is funded by the usual suspects: George Soros, Clinton Foundation, Gates Foundation, all those folks. And the Poynter Institute has a history of embarrassment in putting things out that they haven't fact-checked. Like last year they put out a list of 100 fake news sites, and they had put Judicial Watch on it. So Judicial Watch is, albeit conservative, it's very, very on the level. They check their facts. That is really, really solid. So when Poynter Institute was exposed for having Judicial Watch on their fake news list, they just took the list down, didn't put out any any sort of statement about it, and it was...
That's the way media is. They never apologize. Oh, we told you the lie or the wrong story forever. It just never happened, right?
Exactly. So then you have Wikipedia. So Wikipedia has their parent company is Wikimedia. So you look at the corporations that are giving millions and millions of dollars a year in donations to Wikimedia, and you have, again, we have Gates, we have Clinton, we have Soros, we have Goldman Sachs, ExxonMobil, BP, Pfizer, Merck,
so
Coca-Cola.
we've really become a corporatocracy.
Total corporatocracy, because you have to wonder, Alphabet, who owns Google, which is a pharmaceutical company, they give millions and millions of dollars to Wikipedia each year, and you have to wonder, why is the New York Stock Exchange giving so much money to Wikipedia each year, and what are they getting out of it?
Right, because it's not a moneymaker.
Allegedly, it's not a moneymaker. And then the other one is Snopes. So Snopes, which you have the owner on record saying it is a moneymaker because they sell advertising to, again, all of the big evil corporations.
Advertising, what's true?
Completely. And so Snopes had started out as kind of like a site that would fact check things about like the Loch Ness Monster and Yeti and aliens, and it was kind of like that subculture, and it was a couple that Googles things, no background in journalism, no background in any sort of like adherence or integrity around facts, and basically they do a lot of Google searches, and then that goes up as fact checking.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's back up to the corporatocracy discussion. I've known this for a while. I used to teach media literacy.
Oh, cool.
In fact, I taught it before it was a word. I was like Peter Media Literacy Seed for a decade, spreading it around the country. And what's interesting to me is that if you look at the small group of corporations that you mentioned, or the usual suspects, they all have a board of directors. Mm-hmm. And those boards of directors are interchangeable.
Yep.
So if you look at just mass media, you're talking about 150 different individuals deciding 85% of the bottom line of what you see in here. Can you tell me what it's like to know that rulers, modern day money kings, have set up this situation with corporates and we just all follow along? Can you tell me your take on that?
It's super frustrating. It's very frustrating because I'm a journalist and my background is in hard news as a journalist. So it's frustrating, in my career as a journalist, to have had so many doors close on me because I was pitching stories or taking angles in stories that weren't towing, the line of these oligarchs. It's frustrating to live in a country where we allegedly have the First Amendment, we allegedly have a free press, but we don't have a free press. I think what's most frustrating is that we as individuals in the populace are not operating with the same information. And I understand why people who watch mainstream news and check Snopes and Wikipedia think that I get that why they think what they think, but it's very frustrating because we know different with the information we have, and it's very hard to find middle ground because we're being scammed. So I find it frustrating more than anything.
Right. Yeah, so I was listening to a commentator, or a channeling commentator, the other day, and she said, we don't live on a free planet because you have to pay for it. You have to pay your rent, you have to pay for food. It's not a free planet. So we're under this illusion that we live in a free country.
Right.
All right. And for me, I keep thinking about it. We were sold that for a year. We would send our kids off when they were young to go fight oil wars. Right. And they'd come back maimed and wounded, and we'd say, you have to fight for freedom.
Right.
And I thought, what a moron of oxys, or an oxymoron. You don't fight for freedom. You be free to be free.
Exactly. Like, freedom is our natural state, so there's nothing to fight for. It's just standing for what is, and yet it isn't. We're living in a corporation, and we're living under so many scams and shams that most people don't know about. So it's weird.
So what suggestions would you have for someone who is understanding the content of Plandemic 2 indoctrination? They understand what's going on. How do you be free in this environment? What suggestions do you have?
I feel like right now it's really about our individual sovereignty and our individual freedom and setting up our own frequency, in the day to our freedom, to our empowerment, and choosing to vibrate that frequency, choosing to radiate that frequency. I feel like it's kind of all we can do at this point. That's what I do, and just trust that that's radiating and emanating as I'm moving throughout the world, because the mainstream media, they're playing on fear. That's
right.
really the main thing. So my number one thing is to set up my vibration such that I'm in joy and that I feel good. And when I notice myself in fear, then I know, I'm giving my power away, or I'm being manipulated, and that's affecting my now, my happiness in the now, which is the only thing I have, and I'm not willing to give my now or my joy or my freedom or my empowerment to corporate oligarchs who don't care about me on any level. So it's, for me right now, it feels like a very individualized game. And I also feel like it's very valuable to gather, as we're doing now, such that our frequencies of sovereignty and empowerment can merge and exponentially radiate out. And I feel like it's going to happen in that very sort of like human vibration way. It's not going to happen through the system.
Right. So let me just make a comment before I have a follow-up question. So remember, the people who apparently are pushing the pandemic, scared, get a vaccine, do what we say, muzzle yourself, those same people are the people who sold billions of dollars of addictive opioids and killed hundreds of thousands of us already, and yet we still have this trust. It's just insane.
It's insane. I don't understand why anyone trusts Big Pharma. They have never once had our back. They've never once played fair. And it's another one of those, perhaps you have this too, but so often I go through the world and I feel like, why is everyone not noticing what I'm noticing? Like, if Big Pharma is lobbying for something, I don't even need to know what it is. I know it's not serving the health and well-being of humanity.
Right.
So I find it odd. And at the same time, I'm also finding that whatever mind control is going on, my words are not going to change someone's mind. More so, it's what's emanating from my heart, and what do they feel when they're around me?
Right.
And that's what I'm getting more and more, because the largesse of the sham and how intricately woven into our, the United States is basically a giant pharmaceutical cabal. and I don't...
I'll take a pill to that. Right? Or except we say with liquid pills, I'll drink to that, right?
Yes.
So let me give you a couple of questions that are out there, because I feel like we can have this conversation, because I just get this great feeling from you. And for those of you watching, we're in Santa Fe. This is how we roll in Santa Fe, okay? So the first one is, I heard a different commentator, another woman who's also a channeler, sit there and very recently talk about, don't buy into the languaging of it's a lockdown. Don't buy into the languaging of fear. Mm-hmm. Don't buy into the languaging of that vaccines will be mandated. Right? She suggested that you deal with your fears as they come up, but then you come up with new words to describe how I'm living in this situation.
100%.
So tell me some takes you have on that.
Okay, so I'm going to take it in two different directions. One is we are the creators of our reality, and how we're vibrating now, the words that we're using now, those are going to create the future. So when people come with the fear and the vaccines, that's not the reality I'm living into. I'm just not choosing that lifestyle for myself. And I know that people are waking up very quickly. So I choose to put my attention on the future that I'm living into, how wonderful can it be? And I don't give voice to the things that I don't want, because language functions on so many different levels, and one of the primary ways it functions is that it establishes existential isness. It gives validity to things. Right. So I'm not going to give validity to any of that nonsense with my words. That's not what I'm creating. That's not what I came to this planet.
I saw a nice YouTube video you did where you were talking to somebody, and that person said that their friend was allowed to go to a hospital to see somebody, and you got all over the word allowed.
Yes.
So you don't want to give voice to the whole thing that this is normal, that there's other people calling calling the shots, that you're allowed to live, you're allowed to die.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really important that we language everything we're doing right now as choices. You know, I'm choosing to go along with the mask thing when I go to the co-op because I choose, you know, to benefit from some of the products that they sell. It's not that they make me. That's a choice because I can choose to not go
So
there.
my cat who's walking right in front of the camera that you can't see is named Ninja. So I'm choosing to be the ninja when I'm out there. I'm going to infiltrate them undercover.
Exactly. Or I'm choosing to bring good vibes into the public sphere. You know, I'm going to subvert their agenda by wearing this costume and going in and spreading love and being silly. And then the other piece is a lot of the languaging. This is not the new normal, and I always push back on that if I hear that. This is a temporary anomaly, and it is very, very important that we do not sign on to any sort of normalcy here, because in terms of Yuri Bezmenov's 4 stages of ideological subversion, which is basically the strategy behind every communist takeover, normalization is the 4th and final stage. And the powers that would like us to be at that edge right now. So it's really important that we push back. And when we hear someone say this is the new normal, say, no, it isn't. This is temporary anomaly. There's nothing normal about this.
So I like this. I used to do a lot of debate in college. I won trophies and champions and stuff like that. And I always knew that if you win the definitions, you win the debate. Okay, so you always work on that level, not on the argument level. So when people say it's the new normal and you're saying, no, this is an anomaly, I want to even carry it further. I want to sit there and say, this is the transition to something great. I'm going to step on what was, and it's going to crumble, and I'm going to see all the dirt and crap that was in it. And this is the phase of getting out the broom and sweeping out the dirt and crap. This is our transition to something great.
I love that. I really love that, because that's uplifting. Like that there's, I can add, I feel your enthusiasm, and I can lend my enthusiasm to that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I really like that.
So let's talk politics for a second, and I don't want to go into this or that candidate or anything like that, because, you know, the reality is that both parties have their suck-ups who sell out, all right? And so I've been looking at 2 different points of view recently, and I want to present these points of view for you and then hear your commentary on them. And both of these were channeled again. I love it. Why not? Let's go off planet for some experienced people who dealt with this. All right. And the first one was, you don't want to vote because you're just upset and frustrated. Do it anyway, and vote for whoever you think is going to cause the most change. Okay. And then, because discernment is picking up and everybody's doing it. I was working with a guy yesterday who'd never tried discernment, and I did a little lesson with him, and instantly he got how to recognize truth in the field or not. It was quite cool.
Beautiful.
All right. So the thought is discernment's going to rise, and within the next 2 or 3 election cycles, no candidate will be able to lie, because people will just go, oh God, that again, and they'll be out there. So that's one point of view.
I love that point.
The other channeled point of view, which is equally interesting to me, was don't vote. Because if you vote, you're going through the ritual of giving your sovereignty away to a corrupt system that you know is a sham. So don't do that. Just go start what you want to do and live your life the way you want to do. So I'd love to hear your commentary about politics, because I think these are both very interesting points of view.
Yeah, it's really timely that you are asking me this, because I've wrestled with this for several years, and just this morning I had a reading with my go-to psychic to ask, what is your take on voting, and is it in my soul's highest interest to participate in this sham? So I'm having the same conversation with myself.
It's a big one. Now,
it really is a big one.
This is important, because if we're having it, that means many people across the planet on an existential level are saying, what is this thing that we go to? Do we really have a choice or stuff? So it's going to change just because of the awareness. But here we are settling with what we're aware of. So what do you got?
Yeah, I'm, so back when Obama was first running, my friends and I, we pulled an all-nighter the night before the election. We took a lot of mushrooms, and we were just taking apart the idea of voting from all angles and thinking, like, our forefathers did not create this system for us to vote out of fear. And I don't take any action out of fear. I don't take any action to avoid something negative. And it feels like so much of voting has become that. So I opted out for several years. And then last election cycle, I was really excited about Bernie. And so at that time, I chose, I'm going to vote and I'm going to write him in. I'm going to do my thing. Because I feel like if I am going to vote, I want to be in integrity, where I'm actually excited about a candidate.
Voting for somebody you
Yes, I'm voting
by.
for something. I'm not going to vote against something. It's just anathema to how I live my whole life. So I have been really wrestling with this one, and I don't know. There's part of me that feels like if I vote, then I am giving my approval to the system on some energetic level, and I don't. And at the same time, I know this election, and again, is it a big psyop that it's so important and that it's so edgy?
Right. So and this is again not to challenge anything, but for all I know, when I listen to what Q says, another reason to be banned, I said Q. So when I listen to what Q says, I'm like, this is good stuff. But is this just a Republican psyop for Trump's thing? We don't really know that either, because a lot of this stuff is keep the faith, keep the faith, keep the faith, keep the faith. I'm like, how about give me some stuff?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the problem with Q that I find is very hierarchical as far as trust us, we know this. And as an academic, I'm guessing you might be the same. How do you get this information? Where are you getting this information? It's very, you're asking me to lend you so much faith and trust.
So I have a lot of trust in that, the Federal Reserve has been defanged, right? Okay.
But what does it mean that it's been absorbed into the Treasury?
Right, so that's the whole question. Is it just going to be a payout to more millionaires, or is it going to be we got $6 billion of debt, we wiped off the books, let's all have a debt jubilee?
Who knows? Yeah, is Nassara Gassara really going to happen?
Right.
Or is it going to come more corrupted within the field of the corporation that is the United States of America?
Right.
Who knows?
So let's get back to my first question. So we're in this field. We've got all this conflicting information that we're trying to make sense of. I personally believe that this is all the challenges of the time for growth. This is all going to rub me here or there. What do you think's going on for individuals like us and everybody else who's having to make decisions about we're in the madhouse, we're in a crazy world.
Yeah.
What do I do next? What suggestions you got for people?
So right now, I feel like everything that's coming up is for us to look at for ourselves and for our own personal growth. People are so triggered, and I feel like what I call the sham show is playing on those triggers. So right now, when I'm triggered, I know this is me. What can I take responsibility for, and to bring it back to ourselves. And the other piece is neutrality. Feels like a superhero tool right now, because it's very easy to get caught in that polarity and to, you say, and I'm agnostic on the president. I don't know him. I'm not for, I'm not against. But I notice how some people, just the mention of his name will elicit a really intense emotional response, either super negative or super positive.
Which means there's been training going on.
Exactly.
And whether it's external training or just a mental tape playing over, there's been training going on.
Exactly. So right now I feel like for me personally, the best tool is neutrality. And where can I be neutral, and how can I remain equanimous? And also the biggest piece is that we're not agreeing. People have completely different worldviews, completely different ideas of what's going on, and I feel like the most important thing is for us to be able to live harmoniously with different beliefs. So if someone's coming at me with some crazy leftist, pro-Fauci, pro-mask thing, it's for me to accept them as they are, approve of them as they are, notice where I'm getting triggered and what that is in me that is inviting healing and integration, while honoring this being and where they're at. That to me feels, and again, it's personal, that feels like the most important thing right now.
You're more generous than I am. I'm my first thought is, let me get away from this. Then, because that's just the energy's yucky to me, right?
Totally.
But then, and this is something I was listening to last night, another person was discussing neutrality. All right, so it's interesting, 2 days in a row this word's coming up for me, something's coming up.
Pay attention.
All right, so she was talking about that there's two ways to look at neutrality. One is you just don't take a stand. The other one is you say, there's more sides to this than one, and I see all the sides, and I choose this one. All right. So it's interesting that you can be an activist and be neutral.
Exactly. And for me, it's a quantum leap. You know, you've seen my videos. Historically, I'm volatile, I'm opinionated, I'm in your face, and I see where that doesn't necessarily serve the harmony of the human family right now. So for me, and where I'm at on my path, it's more important for me to find a place of compassionate understanding of why someone believes what they believe. So when I'm in a conversation with someone whose ideas are diametrically opposed, I get curious and I just want to know, oh, cool, like, why do you think that? Like, where are you getting your information? And without making them wrong.
See, I don't even want to know that. I just want to just go, you know, but so a while ago I was taking these spiritual classes and they were quite grueling. It was spiritual boot camp, you know, and it was literally a matter of spending a month at a time where just getting triggered. And then in the middle of all this, they said, we're going to teach them mind games. And I'm going to put these listed out as I say them. So there's 6 mind games, and they're really fun to play. I'm right, and you're wrong. I've got good reasons for what I do.
Right.
Your reasons suck.
Right.
I should be in control because I'm right. You should have no say in this because you're wrong. Those are the mind games.
This game's going on. This game's very popular right now.
Yeah, right. So I'm like looking at all this and I'm like, okay, neutrality is really understanding that there's multiple truths, which is something, what? Truth? And that's something I have trouble with. This is true for that person. This is true for this person. Can you speak to the plurality of truth? What was the word you used?
Omniscopic.
Omniscopic. Yes, thank you. Speak to that, please.
Yes. I mean, omniscopic refers to, that's a word I created that means access to every potentiality that is, was, or will be. And it is very similar to the fact that we all have different perspectives. Like, just right now, like, from my perspective, I can see certain parts of this room that you can't see. And from your perspective, you're seeing parts of this room that I can't see. Add on top of that, you know, how we were raised, where we were raised, our personal experiences, our lenses of perception, how our brains process, and you realize we're all having our own experience and they're all valid. And no one is more important than the other. And I feel like part of what's going on is really nudging humanity to start to get this, to really grok this and be okay with it. Because we don't seem to be agreeing. You know, we don't seem to be coming to the same ideas. And you know, I've learned this the hard way because I've been a journalist for my whole career, and I have really smart friends who love me who think everything I'm saying is wrong. And that, I'm like, do you understand this is my full-time job? And it's been my job for years to study all this. And they still think I'm wrong, and I've gone through a phase of taking it very personally.
So that's the key. I mean, I'm very close to people who are having odds with their family over the whole validity of the scam, right?
Right.
And so there's this whole thing about at what level do you take it personal, right? Is this a matter of being rejected and I'm not loved?
Right.
Is this a matter of, oh, but I love you and I want to help you?
Right.
How do you deal with that when your good friends are at odds with you because of your truth?
So where I've come to is before 2016, political differences with my friends did not affect our friendships. And differences of opinion on world events did not affect our friendships. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a tiny piece of my life. It's not a priority for me. It really isn't. So for me to give it that much power and let it come in between my friendships is me sabotaging myself and sabotaging my friendships and letting the system divide and conquer, which is what it wants to do. So, and keep in mind, this is new for me. I'm still mastering this, you know? Like,
all of us.
Yes. I'm learning this now and just realizing my friendships are more important. The love that we share, the respect that we have for one another is more important. It really doesn't matter if they think I'm right, if they see what I see. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, and I feel sad for people And I'm wondering how much of that is just me tapping into the essence of sadness, and how much of that is me playing the superiority game, where I'm like, oh yeah, I got this and I can be free, and poor them. And I'm like, that's something for me to be aware of.
100%. And that's one that I have yet to resolve that, because, for a while last year, I had a partner for a short time, 6 months, who was super liberal and loved the New York Times and loved Hillary Clinton. And I learned a lot in that relationship. And there would be moments where we would get into it, and I would push past what I thought I knew to stay open in service to relational harmony. But then there were points where I thought, but I am right. But I do know what I know.
Right, yes.
So I'm still trying to figure that out. And it goes back to, how important is this,
One of my friends was talking about him running at odds with his girlfriend because the political thing, right? How can they not know this stuff?
Right.
And so for me, it's really an interesting dance to walk, because I'm getting all these messages from so many sources saying, find your tribe, be with your tribe.
Yeah.
I'm blessed to have the most loving wife that, and when we do tilt our head, it's because we're seeing eye to eye, okay?
Yeah.
And, it's like, but there's also allowance for all the idiosyncrasies in this. How do you balance out being with your tribe, which feeds you and has your sovereignty, versus being with your relations? I mean, some people are just like cutting off and just going to their tribe, and that's it. Where do you see yourself in that?
I definitely have been being more with my tribe, and kind of took a big break from the relations that aren't on board with me. And it's really just in the past week or two that I'm feeling stronger and resourced enough to dip my toe in to little bits of relatedness. And because I don't want to throw those relationships away, and to be perfectly honest, I'm spending most of my time by myself.
Right, I know. See, I've done that because my path to awakening was such that I was always kind of a loner anyway. And, because of all my beautiful traits of how I treated people, but also because, I was one of the guys who could see things in the room, and I just never quite felt like I fit. So then as I awakened, I started finding that I was more of a loner. So I had to really go out to seek friends and really create friendships. And now I have a handful, and they're all quite nice. And of course, they all reflect around me, although not politically and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's almost like, and I don't know if it's a justification or if it's just simply a description of my path, but my path to awakening involved pruning down the amount of connections I had.
I'm very similar, and I have a lot of connections, and I hold them at bay. My friends know that I need a lot of space, and that I take a lot of time to myself. And I will say, the beauty of this situation is, like connecting with you, and how easy it is to recognize those of us who are on the same page. And it does indicate a different sort of value system. So I also find myself...
Just to let people know, sorry to interrupt you, except for the interrupting part. Just let people know, I've never met Dani in person before. There's only been several emails after I read her beautiful book. So it's like, to sit here and have this connection is just wonderful. So
yeah, so it's bringing new people into my life. And having just moved back to Santa Fe in November, I find myself with a whole different new tribe of people around me, because of a shared worldview that I didn't realize so many of my friends didn't have. So it's bringing new people into my life, and there is a part of me that feels like, and again, I have a third dimensional mind, so when these channelers or these higher, spiritual teachers talk about a split, I don't really understand what that means, but I am starting to see that, like, those of us who are choosing to live into a beautiful reality of co-creation and abundance and sovereignty seem to be finding one another, and those who are buying into the sham show seem to be choosing a different reality. And I guess we'll see in the next few months how this plays out in 3D.
Right.
It's a weird time.
Right. Okay, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover here, so let's do a couple of important things. Like, subscribe, share, follow, at least till they ban the video. All right, because that's how the algorithm
Cancel,
works.
clear, delete. We're gonna slip through the algorithm unnoticed.
Right, there you go. See, that's it. That's what I love about this woman. Cancel, clear, delete. Let's do this there. So, how do people get in touch with you?
DaniKatz.com is the easiest way. It's the umbrella site that holds my quantum languaging site and all my social media. You can get to my YouTube channel where I post tons and tons of free content, and my Instagram where I post every day. So DaniKatz.com is best.
Great. Okay, DaniKatz.com. And then, how do we find Plandemic Indoctrination?
So I keep hearing that they are going to such huge lengths to censor this video. So from what I've heard, the BitChute link is the easiest way to get to it.
I'm going to post that below this video if you're watching, or the audio description. You're going to find the BitChute link. Watch it. Fantastic. And I think I was listening to Christiana Northrup.
Yes,
Dr.
she's
Northrup.
awesome.
She the other day said, "Oh, it's pretty easy to tell if it's banned. It's probably true."
Exactly. At this point, that's my litmus. When the fact checkers tell me it's false, I know, oh, this is really solid information that I want to check out.
Right, yeah. So now, last words of inspiration. Somebody just came across this and they're saying, who are these crazy people? How can they talk about expanding and growing and becoming awesome in the midst of all this stuff? What do you got to say to them?
I mean, I feel like this is the best time to become awesome because there's so much breaking down and we're all collectively in the unknown. So there's so much possibility and potentiality. So I would say the biggest thing right now is turn off the mainstream news, turn off any media that elicits fear in your body, and start to tap into how wonderful it can be and what you want it to look like and how you want your future to shape itself, and continue to hold that vibration strong while connecting with other people who are on the same page.
Thank you. All right, Dani Katz. Many blessings to you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.